stand as you already are. I appreciate that. As we honor the Lord by reading His words. Today we're reading from Luke, verse 1 to 11. One day Jesus was standing beside Lake Gennesaret when the crowd pressed in around him to hear God's word. Jesus saw two boats sitting by the lake. The fishermen had gone ashore and were washing their nets. Jesus boarded one of the boats, the one that belonged to Simon, and asked him to row out a little distance from the shore. Jesus sat down and taught the crowds from the boat. When he finished speaking to the crowds, he said to Simon, "Row out further into the deeper water and drop your nets for a catch." Simon replied, "Master, we've worked hard all night and caught nothing, but because you say so, I'll drop the nets." So they dropped the nets, and their catch was so huge that their nets were splitting. They signaled for their partners in the other boat to come and help them. They filled both boats so full they were about to sink. When Simon Peter saw the catch, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, "Leave me, Lord, for I am a sinner." Peter and those with him were overcome with amazement because of the number of fish they caught. James and John, Zebedee's sons, were Simon's partners, and they were amazed too. Jesus said to Simon, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you will be fishing for people." As soon as they brought their boats to the shore, they left everything and followed Jesus. These are the words of God for God's people.
Thanks be to God.
Bible school, because following Jesus changes the game. I mean, if you're kind of wondering about all the fun stuff up here, we're doing twists and turns because following Jesus changes the game. And you know, every game has a starting point. You know, when the game begins. In baseball, it's that first pitch. Basketball, the tip-off. Volleyball, the first serve. In Monopoly, the first roll of the dice. Wheel of Fortune, the first spin of the wheel. I mean, every game has a time that it starts. But there are some things that need to be decided even before the game starts, some questions to grapple with. You know, who's going to start the game? What's the starting lineup? Who's going to be on the court first? In Monopoly, there are some questions that need to be answered. Who's going to be the banker? What are the house rules? Anybody have house rules for Monopoly? Yeah, what are the house rules that we agree on? And then, real important is, which token are you going to choose? But there's these questions we got to deal with even before we start the game. And I think that life's journeys are that way too. There's always a starting point, but there's questions. You know, in life, what do I want to be when I grow up? You know, what am I going to do after high school? You know, things like that. And then, you know, when will I retire? Do I have enough money? How do I plan for it? There's all these questions to do it before we start a new journey, a new part of the journey in life. Or, you know, do I say yes to the marriage proposal? Or, you know, do I propose marriage? You know, Jeanette, after she said no to the first 2 times I asked, you know, I regrouped, asked, they had to ask, no, it was really only once. Asking him. But there are these questions we grapple with. And in the Christian journey, I think, has a starting point for each and every person. Whether you've been following your entire life, or just begun, or still deciding, there's a starting point for following the Christian journey. And there's a real critical question to grapple with before that journey begins. Now, some of you know a little bit about my journey, to share a little bit. My Christian journey didn't really begin in church. My Christian journey began as a young adult. It began at a concert at the Los Angeles Forum. It wasn't a Christian concert with one of those great talented Christian bands. No, it was a group known as Fleetwood Mac. Great way to start a Christian journey. But the person that I invited to go to the concert with, she lived down the street. I was with my brother and sister-in-law in California. She was their babysitter. Very dedicated, devout Christian. I met her once, but thought, well, listen, I'll see if she wants to go to the concert. My sister-in-law said, don't get your hopes up. But she agreed, I'm sure, over the objections of her parents, but agreed to go to the concert. And that started the Christian journey because she started sharing. As the friendship developed, she shared the difference that Jesus made in her life. And from there, then it was an invitation to attend church. And I heard from others the impact and the involvement of God in their life that month, that week, that day. And in weeks after that, I made the commitment to follow Christ. Made a commitment to follow Christ in the Christian journey. And it has had its twists and turns. It's had its setbacks. I don't know. Maybe that's just my journey in the Christian faith. But it has had those twists and turns. But there was a question that I had to grapple with even before I made that commitment. It's the same question we all have to grapple with. It's the question that those fishermen on the seashore that day had to grapple with, especially Peter. There they are on the shore. We heard the story. Jesus is there on the shore. There's large crowds. This group, they've been out fishing all night, kind of in the shallows where the fish are feeding. They have nothing to show for it. Worked hard all night, but there's nothing. And that's their living. That's how they make a living. If there's no fish, there's no food. I mean, there's nothing. And they're washing the nets. Now, the crowd keeps getting bigger, and I think pushing in on Jesus, so he gets in a boat, specifically the one, Peter's boat, Simon Peter's boat. Says, just row out a little bit, give me some distance. And then after it's over, he looks at Peter and he said, how was it? He goes, we worked all night, didn't catch a thing. He goes, let's go try again. But go out a little deeper this time. Here's a carpenter telling a career fisherman how to do his job. I mean, can you imagine the conversation? Peter going out there, he says, hey, we worked hard all night. Jesus says, well, maybe you should go do it again. Try it this way. Just do it a little different. Now, just an aside, that's a whole sermon in itself, isn't it? When we think it's over, when we think it's failed, when we think, no, we tried that 50 years ago, we shouldn't try it, maybe we should listen to Jesus and maybe do it. Just do it a little different. There's Peter, the conversation from the others. Where's Peter going? I don't know. What's he doing? He's going out. Peter, what are you doing? He said to go fish. Peter, everybody knows it's daylight. You're going out to the deep. Everybody knows there's something to fish. What is this carpenter doing anyway? Come on, Peter. We're tired. Let's go home. But he's out there, and you hear what happens. The boat becomes full. There's these fish squirming, wiggling, jumping all over. The boat, it's going to sink. The nets are going to tear. They have to call for help. And Peter has a strange reaction, I think. Did you catch it? I mean, Peter has a strange reaction. While everyone else is overcome with amazement, Peter falls on his knees and said, Lord, leave me. I'm not worthy to be in your presence. Now, I don't know if it was just this great power of Jesus, or if he was amazed by the knowledge of Jesus, or maybe Peter thought if Jesus could look into the murky waters of the Sea of Galilee and see clearly, then maybe he can see into the murky waters of my soul and life. And I don't want him looking there. He says, Lord, I'm not worthy. And Jesus says, okay, stop right there. Don't discount yourself. Don't discount yourself. Whatever has been in the past is in the past. Peter, whatever blunders you're going to make in the future, well, that's just how it's going to be. But I want you to come and follow me. because there are no prerequisites. You don't have to be good enough. Jesus didn't say, all right, Peter, well, let's see if you're good enough. Let's check off this list and check it out. Isn't it interesting that there are no prerequisites to following Jesus, yet sometimes there are prerequisites to belonging to a church? Whatever we have in our past, whatever murkiness there is in our soul that we just don't want people to know about and to see, Jesus still says follow. You know, and that changes the game. That just changes the game. Anyone and everyone Jesus invites. There's no prerequisites. You don't have to be good enough. Jesus helps you become good. You know, and that changes the game. And now Peter, he has to make that life change. There's a life-changing question there in front of him. Now, Jesus is inviting him to follow. And there they are. And I think in the success, Peter is going to easily say yes. You know, if you invite Jesus along and all of a sudden you have success, you go, yeah, I want to keep Jesus around so we can be even more successful. I mean, imagine the great fishing enterprise we're going to have if we keep Jesus involved in this. I mean, isn't that what Jesus is about? You know, helping us to be healthy and wise and successful. And I mean, if you know you want something, you just put Jesus. You want a little more, you add a little bit more. Isn't it all about just gain? A youth mission trip took us to Arkansas. I say that because usually you need a reason to go to Arkansas. Just to get away because it's a beautiful place. But there's these 3 or 4 youth groups. We went to Arkansas. I was one of the adults on the trip, and I was in charge of the evening programming, but the fun part, recreation part. It's a good thing to be have responsibility of. And we're out there, I don't know if it was Monday night or Tuesday night, we're out there and the youth are involved in just this really intense game of elbow tag and visiting with the pastor, and all of a sudden this pickup comes driving up to the church and guy gets out to look at the pastor and goes, you know, so the adults become a little uneasy. He comes over, introduces himself and said, hey, my wife and I, we've heard what y'all are doing in town with helping, you know, doing this work on these houses. So we would just love to have you over if you want for a cookout. We'll provide all the food, hamburgers, hot dogs, and all the youth can come and swim in the pool. And we'd love that. So on Thursday night, we all went over there. And they were so gracious, you know, hamburgers, hot dogs, providing all the food, the pool, and they had this very nice house on all this acreage, this pool, this 7-bay car garage, you know, detached. They used several of the bays for the kids to practice their band instruments. I thought, what a brilliant idea. Away from my house. Some of you know that's a good idea, don't you? But all the time, you know what they kept saying? They said, God has blessed us. You know, God has blessed us with this house. God has blessed us with this acreage. God has blessed us with this. God has blessed us with that. And one of the youth kept hearing that and came up to me and said, Pastor Jeff, does that mean that Mrs. Jones, whose house we're trying to fix the holes in the floor, is it blessed? Peter has a life-changing, a game-changing question in front of him. Because Jesus says, okay, I want to invite you into the life and ministry, Peter. I want you to now, we're going to do something different. I want you to come along with me. Be part of the ministry. Do something wonderful and great. To use your skills, but in a different way. And there's all these fish. Right? There's just all these fish. And the question that Peter has to ask before he follows is, whose fish are they? Whose fish are they? I thought before you follow, for a long time, I thought the first question was, am I going to follow or not? No, before you even decide that, you got to answer the question, whose fish are they? Whether you been following Jesus for 60 years or 6 days, you're still trying to decide, there's that question. Whose fish are they? See, because the amazing thing that happened wasn't in the depths of the sea, but in the depths of Peter. In the depths of Peter, where he had to grapple with this question, whose fish are they? And that's when Jesus invites them to come along. As soon as they brought the boats to shore, they left everything and followed Jesus. If we could put that verse up there, 5:11, up on the screen. Now, whose fish are they? That couple in Arkansas that invited these 3 or 4 youth groups over to their house, on their land, used their pool, shared their food. I think they knew whose fish they were. You know, they were God's fish for the people of God. As the great preacher Fred Craddock says, there's no clearer meaning to following Jesus than to be able to answer the question, whose fish are they? They are not mine. They are not mine. No, they are God's for God's people. And these disciples on the seashore that day, they answer that question, and they're going to have to answer it again and again and again. As we do on our Christian journey. Let's say this together. As soon as they brought the boats to shore, they left everything and followed Jesus. See, they managed to answer that question. Whose fish are they? Peter's going to have to answer that question again. After Jesus dies and is resurrected, he's going to be asked to go somewhere that he would have never have gone. To step through a door he would have never stepped through. And before he steps through that door, he's going to have to ask himself again, whose fish are they? Oh, they're God's fish for the people of God. Let's say this verse again. As soon as they brought the boats to shore, they left everything and followed Jesus. Whose fish are they? So one other thing, what other thing or things do you still need to leave in order to follow Jesus?